Hey guys, welcome to the show. My name's Adam. Today I'm excited to introduce Bill Brent, who's currently working at Mack Trucks, building America's trucks. Build and hold on, let me say that one
It's
time.
okay. It is. We're America's truck.
Awesome. We're
So
letting that stay. Yeah.
do it. So here is I was not that I'm not a truck guy, and I'm so sorry for interrupting you,
No,
but
no, no, go for
this
it.
this is what like bought me in to the Kool-Aid that we're serving. When 9/11 happened, most of those videos that you see pulling rubble away are Mack
Mm-hmm.
trucks.
Hmm.
Rewind time. When they were building the Hoover Dam, if you look at any pictures of building the Hoover Dam, Mack trucks brought the concrete. It gives you chills when you think that we're there in the beginning and we're there during the hard times,
Love that. That's
right? We
beautiful.
were born ready.
It's poetic. And it's
It is.
true. Bill, thank you so much. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Uh it's
Thanks for
great to
having me.
yeah, man. It's nice to see you again. It's been pleasure kind of getting to know you over these last couple of years and kind of kicking off the show. Today we're going to talk about Bill's principles or some of the principles that Bill practices at Mack Trucks. Bill formerly worked at in comes from the logistics industry. Can I
Yeah.
say that?
Yeah.
General management,
E-commerce, supply chain
e-commerce,
management, all of it.
is crushing it. Bill and I met at a previous job when he was working for Zulily in their East Coast facilities. And today's at Mack Trucks. And today we're going to talk about personal leadership and professionalism, coaching and team building, bias for action, technical skill, and communication.
We're
You hit me up about a carpet a couple months ago.
yeah. So uh, one of I try to think outside of the box when we have problems. So the specific problem that I was trying to solve is I have these two people and I should be able to build a job for anybody, but these two people are shorter in stature and they're not weightlifters, right? They're your everyday person and they lift up the floor mat that goes into the truck and they throw it into the truck.
Hmm.
And the floor mats are probably 50-ish pounds.
Wow. Yeah.
So they're not they can't not that they can't, but they shouldn't lift it by themselves. So we don't have a tool or a device or anything that they can lift it up and put it into the vehicle with. And I'm looking at it, it's like I know a guy that sells carpets. There's got to be a hanger or something that we can just roll the floor mat into the cab of the truck and then drop it so that way they don't have to actually lift and hoist and when you think of like heave ho that's what they're doing.
I hear you. Awesome, man. Yeah, I was thinking about it when we are talking some sort of like a dolly or like a forklift, like something with a lift component, something you crank up. It was an idea. There's something that for paper that we use, or that we actually we don't use, but we were looking to use. We created something internally to like lift paper up, but it's only got to go up a foot. How far are you guys going up? It's like, is it a few feet?
Yeah, I want to say it's about 4 feet,
Okay.
uh maybe three, maybe 3 feet off the ground from the bottom of the floor mat. But
Hmm.
we have to be able to get the floor mat into the cab, which is, it's a full car door. So you might actually have to be 8 feet off the ground.
Wow. That's how's it going so far? Are the guys have you guys tried anything or
So there's actually a tool that our roof team uses to put panels on. It looks like that could be modified. So I brought the leader of the group down, showed it to that leader, and they said, no, that might work. So we're trying to retrofit that because when I tried to draw it and describe it, people look at me like, "What are you talking about? That's so weird." It's like, no, but just think about it.
awesome, man? It's trial and error. It's just kind of testing and seeing what works. How many of these do they guys do a day? Is it, I mean, these are building, you're building trucks, so that's it's a process it's
Yeah, we build about
methodical.
108 a day.
108. Wow.
Yeah, so my shit. So I kind of work in between the two shifts, but each shift is roughly responsible for 54.
Awesome, dude.
Yeah.
When you say build, what part of the production process is considered building?
Yes. All of it.
A little bit.
All
Wow.
of it. So to paint the picture, when you first walk into the building, you see what looks like a truck. But the very beginning of the process, it's just two metal sticks that we then build everything around. And the only thing that comes in that looks remotely like a truck is the cab, because those are cast and formed at one of our facilities in Virginia. So that'll come in just a big aluminum box, and
Mm-hmm.
then we'll make it look like that comfortable cab that you see with, the nice cushy seats and the
Mm-hmm.
horn and the radio and all the fun dashboard things. But everything else we assemble here in the building.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing. When you say, so it's chassis, cab, you guys bring them together, bolt them together?
Yeah,
Okay.
so we'll ladder the chassis, so that's when we band it together with cross members, and then we'll run all of the airlines, and then we'll actually put the axles on. And all this is done with the product upside down.
Mm.
We'll flip it, and then we'll put on the drive gear, the slave gear, the torque rods. We'll put the engine in, put the radiator on, fit the cab in, fill it with air, put on tires, the whole 9 yards.
The cabs are often customized. Like truckers, I see on the road, they deck out their trucks all sorts of ways. So are the cabs the customization that happens? Is it specific components? Like is it cab wheels? Or is each truck? Are you guys? Is it one job, or is the customization done sort of later on down the line?
Uh, Both. So one of the things that makes Mack pretty unique is that every truck we build is a custom truck. So out of those 108, I want to say maybe 8 of them are going to a dealer as a stock truck. The other 100 are built for a customer for their specific order. Now, there might be some additional customization that they need for a specific type of use case. And if you think of a municipal truck, like a garbage truck going through New York City, they might have to go to another party to have specific pieces put on.
Mm.
But most of the customization of the cab, at least for Mack trucks, is done here in the building.
It's amazing. That's amazing. So 107 of these popping out a day. That's no joke, man. That
Yeah.
is no, it's amazing. And this is happening in Pennsylvania.
Yep. Yeah. So every Mack truck that you see on the highway or at a construction site was built at the building where I work.
Amazing.
There's, yeah, there's a medium duty truck that we just started building, and you might see those in New York for deliveries. And that medium duty truck is built in Roanoke, Virginia, but they've only been operating for maybe 2 years.
Hmm.
But yeah, every highway truck, every municipal or refuse truck, every vocational truck, that all came from my building.
Amazing, man. Mack, it's an iconic brand. You think of trucks, you think of Mack trucks. Is there a
Yep.
particular model that's a top seller? The Mack truck?
So our bread and butter
Yeah.
is the municipal trucks. We have, the I don't want to say trash trucks because that just paints the wrong picture, right? But that
More
municipal truck,
professionally. Okay.
right, that
That's
is
kind of
kind of our
our
bread
bread
and
and
butter. It's called cab over engine.
Okay.
So when you think of highway trucks, most people don't traditionally think of a highway truck as a Mack truck. We build fire trucks, we build delivery trucks, we build UPS, we build ABF. If there's a brand out there that buys trucks, we build it.
Mm-hmm. Amazing, man. Amazing. Very interesting. Thank you, Mac, for taking care of my trash. And that's awesome, man. Cool. So let's talk about like leadership management. This weekend we were chatting and you mentioned, a topic that had come up um around like measuring, developing leadership, like ways to measure. I guess yeah, let's double click into that topic. I'd love to hear your thoughts, sort of, what are you working on today at Mac, and one of your I guess as a Mac Your official title, let me see here. Hold on one sec.
Business unit manager.
As a Mac business unit manager, when you think about leadership, what are some of the things that you're focusing on uh, currently in the
So
role?
the funny thing about leadership is that it can't be distilled down to one or two things. And what I've encountered is that most people who are, especially most people who are new to leadership, are looking for the silver bullet or the one thing that will make them promotable to the next leader. I've done a lot of touch points and interviews and conversations with the team. And they're focused on, a level one supervisor getting promoted to a level two supervisor. And when I talk to them about things that they see desirable for from their leaders,
Hmm.
that's where I've developed some or I shouldn't say I've developed some competencies. I've kind of spearheaded that conversation. But the other part of it was all of those things that the supervisors are like admire from their next level leaders are all things that the organization kind of said, well, they're supervisors, they should do this.
Yeah.
So creating that list is what I'm working on. And that was a long way of saying that, but
Yeah.
um, creating that
Leadership is a
list.
position. It's a position that we're expected to deliver. We're expected to be a leader. We're expected to be able to lead others and guide others. So we're looking at our managers, as you mentioned, you called out really well. It's like we want to show that to our leadership that we're delivering on the results to what they need done, and also to our teams where we're supporting them to get through to the finish line day by day. But yeah, what are how do we how do we as leaders empower our other leaders, or how do we as colleagues just empower each other? There's no, you said it very well. If you can repeat that one more time, there's no one
Yeah,
or
there's
two. Yeah.
well, there's no one way, or there's no one, in my case, there's no one competency or one deliverable that make you promotable or make you the best leader. And at the sake of sounding like an infomercial, I put together 5 competencies based off of just dialogue that I've had with the team, dialogue that I've had with people that work for them, and dialogue that I've had with like people at my level. And people can disagree, people can agree, people can grow them or shrink them, but the 5 that we came up with were personal leadership and development, communication, bias for action, coaching and team building, and communication and technical skills. So it's a mouthful, but it's only 5.
Cool, man. Walk me through them. Let's talk through them. And like, what do
Yeah.
they sort of, how do you guys think about them as a company? How do you think about them as a leader?
So there's going to be some overlap, and that was the part where I needed to uh, a get some understanding or build some understanding, and then get that buy-in. Personal leadership and development, personal leadership and professionalism is how you as a leader uh, look for growth opportunities, but also how you conduct with others. And when I say that to someone who's very technical minded, they they just have this blank stare. We was able to get a group of folks together and we said things like driving an active feedback culture demonstrate personal leadership and professionalism. Things like self-awareness, being a mentor, being an owner, maintaining composure in difficult situations, your approachability, your adaptability, those are all ways that a leader can demonstrate personal leadership and professionalism. And we even within those categories, we can branch it out further with can you be a mentor to someone junior to you? Can you be a mentor to a peer? Or can you be a mentor up and you have the managerial courage to coach a superior? And then when we think of coaching and team building, there's some overlap with that motivating and engaging and being approachable, but keeping those two in separate categories, empowering others, being that coach, and then knowing your team's strengths and opportunities are in that bucket of coaching and team building. So giving those individual drivers
Mm-hmm.
Not that you can say, I checked off being a coach
Mm-hmm.
once, right? It's how do you maintain being a coach at different levels in your leadership journey?
Mm-hmm.
And then
The,
bias for action is probably where it starts to get into some of that technical skill piece, even though technical skill is its own category. But things like time management, problem solving, innovation, and managerial courage, you can bring tools in to demonstrate that you can manage your time. You could bring tools in for process improvement. But that's like that conversation was hard because you're talking about tools for time management, tools for process improvement, but that's more of a bias for action than it would be for technical skill. And then in technical skill, that's where you look at the business knowledge. That's where you look at specifics of change management. That's where you look at systems and process knowledge. And that's where you look at analytics. So those are very, like almost hard skills where I can say, yes, I can go into the system and move parts, or I can use these tools to build the truck. So a leader isn't omitted or they're not they don't escape having to understand the job, and that was another important part that everybody said, well, there have to be hard skills. Sure, there's a spot for them.
mm-hmm.
And then that last one, communication, whether it's managing up, speaking effectively, whether it's oral and written communication, crucial conversations, and active listening, like those are all components that make a leader a good leader. So there's a
Awesome,
big
bro.
list.
Yeah, it's a good list, and a lot of details in there. In terms of, you mentioned the first one, feedback was around. Remind me, what was the first one?
Yep, driving an active feedback culture.
Driving an active feedback culture. So how do you promote that within the team? Or promote a manager to sort of practice that.
So part of it is humility, right? It's being open and approachable, making sure that the leader knows that they have to give real time and specific feedback, but then also teaching them something that I call seek to understand. I think one of the lessons that I learned just as I was growing in my leadership journey was don't always have a response when someone provides you critical feedback. Sometimes it's just thank you.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's, I appreciate the feedback. What are you seeing that makes you believe this is true? But that specific and real time feedback is the portion where a other people have to see that you're taking what they're saying seriously.
Yep. In a product manufacturing setting, do guys have is there, how do you practice that? Guys are building trucks, 50 trucks a day. Is it schedule time? Is it lunch breaks? Or do managers sort of have the liberty to be able to just like, go over and talk to guys on the floor? Or is it all of that? How do you guys practice that? Or how do you think about that? There's no one
It's
way, to your point.
Yeah, right. There's no one way. So it could actually that brings up a good segue. Um, a lot of this, like providing feedback, has typically been seen as somebody did something wrong and I have to tell them they did it wrong.
Hmm.
Where it's not about providing just negative feedback. You could be thanking somebody for wearing their gloves or their safety glasses. You could be asking somebody about a work related thing or even about, hey, how did your weekend go? It doesn't always have to be just the
Critical.
exactly. It doesn't always have to be just Bill, you did something wrong. So as long as the feedback is specific, whether it's critical or positive, like that's how they get practice. It's always easy to compliment somebody on something they did right, right? Hey, thank you for doing whatever. But overcoming the hurdle that the I shouldn't say the hurdle, the preconception that, well, you're supposed to wear your safety glasses because it's your job,
Hmm.
right? You could still thank them because some people do and some people don't.
100%. People respond better to positive feedback, to your point. It also kind of builds credits with somebody. You building rapport and relationship in work settings, production setting can be transactional in some regard. There are these rules and these procedures, these norms of the company. But like building rapport and building rapport, I guess is one thing that kind of comes to mind. It's like you build up those credits with somebody. and you build up that relationship. So when it's time to criticize, that you also do have that space to and that sort of level of that relationship to do that easier. I mean, in a professional setting, I guess you do have that. You can, as a manager, you can do it anytime, but to be a more effective manager, I found that you have to be people. You have to be, you know, you have to be not friends, but you have to be you have
Approachable.
approachable. That's the word. Yeah.
Yeah,
You,
so one of the things that you just mentioned, right, is building that up and almost that equity in rapport, in the speed of trust. I think it's Stephen Covey, has you have a trust bank where some people will trust you because you did something for them. Some people will give you trust or just automatically give you trust until you take it away.
mm,
But if you detract with your words and actions more than you fill that trust bank, then you're
that's
not
it.
doing your service as a leader.
Yeah, that's it. Man. Um, cool. Point number two. Mention that one more time. Second.
Yeah, so the very second one under personal leadership and professionalism, which was leading by example, or the second competency, which is coaching and team building.
Coaching and let's go with coaching and team building.
Okay.
How do what are you guys doing today to sort of like what are you thinking about as a leader current day? It doesn't have to be specifically your current it can be you can be as specific as you want, but what are some things leaders can do to sort of establish that?
So I think part of it is, again, I go back to that humility, right? I go back to providing timely feedback because coaching could be holding somebody accountable, right? It could be saying, "Hey, Adam, we have this truck that you just put a J bracket on. The J bracket was installed upside down. Were you aware of the orientation of the J bracket?" So it could be that process oriented, but it could also be providing somebody a challenge and growth opportunities. You could come to me and say, "Bill, I can't deal with whomever, right? Just Steve." And I could say, "Adam, how comfortably are you approaching Steve? Do you understand what Steve did to upset you?" And having that conversation and establishing whether or not you feel comfortable approaching it yourself can be a form of empowerment and positive coaching. And then when I say team building, everybody thinks of trust falls, but it doesn't have to just be that, right? It could be making sure that my team is cross-trained in multiple areas. So if we go back to I build trucks for a living,
Mm-hmm.
I need to make sure that somebody knows how to put the right side tire on and the left side tire on. And maybe I need somebody that also has to put the engine in. If I could train all three of those people in those three areas, then if one calls out, then I have somebody that my team is built, right? My bench strength is strong.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just coaching from a disciplinary standpoint, but it's truly coaching to build that team so that way I don't have to panic when somebody calls out. I don't have to worry about going through the books of who was trained when. My team is empowered to make those decisions.
Yep. Yep. That's a signal of that's sort of a weighted representation of the culture and the team when or the quality of the leadership when the team can be sort of interchangeable and when their thing, when a pillar falls off or when a team member doesn't show up, or shit hits the fan, the team is able to compensate and and um, and feel confident in doing so and communicating the whole way. You
Yep.
mentioned feedback loops. How do you think about like how soon? How do you think about like giving someone a feedback rather? Like you said it should be soon. Like what's soon to you? I think about like in my mind it's depending on the context, but it's like immediate as possible. How do
Yeah,
you think about that? Yeah.
that's I think where the confusing part comes in for someone who's new to leadership versus someone who has had a bit more experience or tenure in that field. To provide you an example, I had an hourly worker who was witnessed doing something they shouldn't. And rather than the person who witnessed it addressing it, they went to human resources. Rather than human resources addressing it, they went to the person's supervisor and myself. Now, I'm good with handling everything, but they omitted the person's direct manager. They also didn't say anything about how to handle it. They just said that person saw this person do something. That was almost
Silo. Yeah.
right, but it wasn't even super specific. It wasn't, hey, at this time we saw this person do this. Well, the supervisor can't run up to Adam and say, Adam, you did this on Thursday and now you're in trouble. Well, timeout. You need to observe Adam. You need to have a conversation with Adam. You need to understand if what was observed was true and if what was observed really violated some unspoken rule. So
Context is king.
in that scenario, attacking it right away or providing the timely feedback may have not been beneficial to the relationship that the worker and the supervisor had. Right. So there has to be a level of, all right, let me understand the situation. Let me do some due diligence. The supervisor was like on their way to talk to this person about what the third party saw
Mhm.
when the manager and I stopped them and said, hey, time out. How are you going to approach this? How would you feel if you were approached this way? How would you like to approach this so you don't feel that person doesn't feel the way that you want to feel or don't want to feel?
Okay.
So that's an example where you have to read the situation, and timely feedback doesn't mean right away like run over and reprimand them. But if it's easy to say if it's
Unless
production
it's
based.
dangerous. If it's
Yeah,
something
yeah,
dangerous,
yeah, totally,
yeah.
totally, yeah, 100%. If it's putting that person or someone else in danger, total disclaimer, stop them right away.
Yep. This guy's putting on the
In this
cabs the wrong way. He's missing a screw on the cab. Can't. No,
Yeah.
no.
But that's actually a great example, and that one's easy because it's production based. But if Adam doesn't put a bolt in place or he doesn't tighten the nut, I have to give you feedback the moment I notice that defect. So that way you know either your way of working is producing an inconsistency, or you weren't really paying attention because you
Yep.
were too busy on your phone or you were talking to the person next to you, and the criticality of your role can produce an unsafe environment. Trying to teach people who are new to leadership or give people that how do I give feedback timely, giving them that information and teaching them what timely means, that's where it's, if you go back to being a mentor, right, that's where being a mentor is also a demonstration of a leadership competency, because you either asked for help, good for you, or I noticed the situation was going to be difficult, so then I came to coach and build you.
The men love it. Okay. How you doing on time, by the way?
I've got the time
Good.
if you've got it.
Cool. Awesome. Awesome.
We're running all night, so
Love it. Awesome, bro. Let's talk to the other leadership principles you talked about. So we covered,
sure.
yeah, let's go down the list.
So I'll do the big categories. Bias for action is one that I think everybody thinks I'm doing something, so I'm taking action, so I have a strong bias for action. But just because you're doing something doesn't mean you took the time to understand what you were doing. And I don't want to how do I explain this? When you're working on a project following the A3 method of solving a project, and that's just a fancy way of saying following a standard question and problem solving process.
Mhm.
If you clearly define your problem and you collect data to find your problem, find how big of a problem you're seeing, it'll lead you to what the solution would be. But if you just take action and implement a solution, you might be overlooking a fundamental part of what the problem really is.
Mhm.
Teaching leaders that, time management is a demonstration of bias for action, not just doing things. Following a standard problem solving process is bias for action, even though it takes longer than just doing the thing.
It's like a scientific method. Is sort of,
Exactly.
yeah. Can you give me some examples, or give me an example? Bias
Yeah.
for
So,
action in the workplace.
yeah, sure. It's very easy to say, I mean, you've had to hire people, right? Like turnover can be intimidating from time to time. So the easy solution is, well, I just need to pay them more.
Yeah,
Maybe,
yeah,
but why are you having a hard time retaining people?
yeah.
Well, because they're not making enough money. Well, no, is it they're not making enough money, or are they taking a different position in the building at the same amount of money? Is it a different position, or is it a different shift at the same amount of money? Is it a different shift at less money? Right. So we have a shift differential. So the people who work on the evenings get paid a little bit more than the people that work during the day.
Yeah.
If
What's an
someone is
evening shift?
leaving,
Like, how
uh,
many? You guys run 3 shifts a day, or is it two?
kind of,
Yeah.
it's production standpoint, we have a daytime shift and an evening shift. So it's 6:45 to 2:15, and then 3:15 to 11:30.
Okay.
So those are the two production shifts. We run 24 hours on our inventory, and we call it materials side. So you have a first, a second, and a third shift. So when we're done building the trucks at 11:30, we have another shift come in and replenish some of the stock of our consumables like nuts, bolts, washers, those sorts of things.
Those parts need to be ready production at all
Always.
times. Yeah.
And then we have a three shift operation for our maintenance team and a three shift operation for our end of line, or we call it final,
Hmm.
because we're building trucks, 108 a day. And just to add another level of complexity, it's actually closer to 130 a day, because the part of the business that I oversee is just our highway truck and our conventional truck. We have another part of the business that I don't oversee, and that's our cab over engine, which are the municipal trucks that I was telling you about.
Hmm.
And that's another 20 or so a day.
Wow.
So, like, the compound builds close to 130 a day. But our end of line department is taking trucks from each of those and making sure that they've met all the safety specifications. If there was a supplier quality defect that they need to repair, they're taking care of that. If there was a production defect, like one of my guys didn't install the airline to the horn, right? That they're going and they're making sure that that's tidied up. If we had to substitute a part because it was missing a point of use, they'll go through and put the correct part on. So they're going through 108 trucks. They're making sure the alignment's set. They're doing a lot of things pre-delivery. So they run 24 hours as well.
Amazing.
So the true production is a daytime shift and an evening shift, and there's a gap in between. And I forgot how we got started on
Yeah, yeah. Bias for action.
bias for
Um,
action and problem solving.
problem
So
solving. Yeah, it's sort of being objective as to problem happens in the workplace. Is it there's an issue? You were giving an example, so I'll pass it back to you.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, we got started on it because I was explaining, if somebody leaves second shift where you actually make more money to go to first shift where you make arguably less money,
Yeah.
is it a money thing? So by giving them another dollar, will they stay? Or is it satisfaction in the job? Because I worked with a guy driving a forklift and a freezer that worked third shift. So comes in at what time do we work? We worked 6 to 4:30 in the morning. So 6 p.m. to 4:30 in the morning. He drove a forklift for 13, 14, 15 years in a freezer. He enjoyed the work. The
It's his
shift
thing.
worked for his life.
Yep.
It was his thing. So how do we take a scientific approach, or a true systemic problem solving approach, to understand why people are leaving your work area instead of just giving them an extra dollar, because that dollar may not work.
Yep. Yeah. First principles thinking, trying to understand the why and the driving factors behind something that happens. When it comes to like retention, I mean that's something. Yeah, is it their manager? Is it the environment? They find a job. In our warehouse, sometimes it's just a little bit more money. Someone can just hop for that. Sometimes it's a proximity to their work, or it's work hours, so they can be home at a certain time to be with the family. But yeah, sometimes, I notice like I'm in a lot of sales related, specifically e-commerce or a store. Customers will say sometimes it's one thing, but then there's all these other factors like, I didn't like the texture of the rug, or I didn't like the color. What does that really mean? Right? So is it just the color? Could it be the texture? Could it be the size? Sometimes as humans we tend to um short form things. We try to like be really efficient and apply a word or a couple words or to it. But it's taking the time to figure out the why. Um and it sounds like there's some process that you use to try to get to sort of methodically or systematically or scientifically try to work through that problem.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm just
yeah.
super annoying and I ask why. And every
Why? You eventually get to, yeah.
well, it's funny because if you've done any sort of formal problem solving, right? We talk about things like a fishbone diagram. Well, that's just asking very specific whys, right? Or an Ishikawa diagram for those folks that are saying, well, there's a real name for it. Yeah, it's an Ishikawa diagram, but it's basically taking your problem and asking why, but focused on man, method, machine, materials, and environment. We can't forget that. But why is the only question. Unfortunately, people have such a stigma with saying, "Oh, you're you're asking me why. That means you're yelling at me." It's like, no, I'm just want to understand.
Yeah, I love that. I'm just looking this up, Ishikawa diagram. This is really good. Equipment, process, people, materials, environment, management. Very cool. I'm gonna bookmark this if I'm back to this. But it's all about it's a six different significant reasons that might impact the whole process. It's just kind of that troubleshooting diagram, I guess, or workflow.
Yeah, and what's nice about that is when if you're trying to whatever problem you're trying to solve, if you put it at the head of that fish diagram and you say, all right, well, what people related issue do you have with it? And you list out those root causes by asking why. It's like, all right, well, if it weren't a people thing, if it were a system thing, if it weren't a system thing and it was a materials or an engineering or environment, you could put a lot of different brainstorm ideas into those buckets. And depending on the person leading that exercise, you can look for commonalities with what people are saying in the different buckets. You can go with the bucket that's easiest to address. You can go with the bucket that's hardest to address. You can draw a correlation to the ones that are the easiest to fix and the least expensive to fix. But that's just one tool in your problem solving bucket
Hmm.
or toolkit.
Yeah. Yeah. To be successful as a worker in a company or someone carrying out a duty or a job position, kind of these are sort of the fundamental components that you need, specifically equipment, understanding, having the right tools, having the right like understanding the process, understanding um the role, what needs to get done, what the mission is, having the right materials to do that. So like this is really a fundamental sort of framework that could be helpful, as a manager, as a growing manager, and one that's sort of continuing to sort of look for tools and methods to get fascinated by them. Kind of getting more into like textbook sort of management fundamentals. With management, it's not a new thing. This is thousands year old in some sense. And we're just kind of adapting it for modern day. But like there's fundamental needs that we have as humans, and these tools are really helpful. Are there any other tools that you use for that you methodologies that you use for management, for coaching, for problem solving?
Yeah. Yes. There's
Or like a go-to, yeah.
yes, but it's one of those things where I use them specifically for the instances that
Mhm.
I'm encountering. There was a gentleman that worked for me that I really wanted to grow in the organization, and this was prior to coming to Mack. He he moved 3,000 miles across the country to come work where I worked. And he was coachable. He had the desire, but he lacked some of the fine tuning that is that kind of put all of those pieces together.
Fine tuning being
And
like skills? Is it soft skills, hard skills? How, like what
yeah,
sort of, how do you describe it?
the best way I could describe it is, he kind of had the six pack, but he didn't have the rings that held the cans together. They were rolling all over. All I did was for him, I used a framework for leadership that he was able to connect with it, and it was John Maxwell's levels of leadership.
Hmm.
And all I really did was I sat with him and I said, "All right, you're a leader, and you want to be the next level leader." And he goes, "Yeah." And I said, "All right, so what are you doing as you're at your level?" And he named off a couple of things. And I said, "Cool. Are you doing everything or most of them?" And he goes, "Well, I'm doing most of them." I said, "All right, what are you doing at your boss's level?" And he listed off a couple of things. I said, "Okay, so you're doing a couple of things that your boss should be doing or can be doing, but you're not doing everything that you need to be doing at your level." And he goes, "Yeah." I said, "Okay, so if you're not 100% your level, how could you ever be the next level?" And he like impacted him so much, like that, just that little exercise that
Hmm.
he just started asking people for feedback on things that he like, not next level people. He was asking people that he worked with, "Hey, what am I not doing that you need me to do to show that I'm competent in my role?" And that was
That's
a humbling
strong.
experience at first for him,
Yeah.
but he is now a general manager at a warehouse in Texas because he again he's coachable, which is part of the battle. He had desire, which is the other part of the
Love
battle.
that. Yeah. Yeah, he really
And
wants
for
it. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
yes,
He really wants it for him to go out like that and be humble, be vulnerable and like that.
yes,
Love that.
and for him it was like that tool. It was just looking at the levels of leadership and saying, all right, if you're missing them here,
Hmm.
how could you ever climb that ladder? And that was super impactful for him. But there's a gentleman that I'm working with now that is really happy where he's working. So talking to him about the levels of leadership and growing to be a lead, like a cultivator of leaders, he's not there yet because that's not on his radar. He
Hmm.
needs to focus on some of those crucial conversations that are fundamental for his role.
Hmm.
So giving him a template to write out the conversation so that way he's not making assumptions about what the person is thinking or doing, and he's not diminishing their involvement in the solution, and he is keeping his thumb on the emotional intelligence and how that person's going to react. Like that tool is going to be totally different than what I gave to the first guy because it what they need is different.
Hmm.
So it's hard to say like what tool do I use because I've used the same coaching conversation planner for years, but I don't always use that
You
planner
got a
for
bag of
everybody because
tricks.
that's
You're a magician.
yeah, yes. Sometimes it feels that way.
That's awesome. The gentleman that you mentioned just now, are you actively coaching him? And like, how does one? Yeah, well, let me ask you the question. Are you actively sort of coaching that gentleman that you just mentioned?
Yeah, so what's good about the gentleman I just mentioned, where he has to focus on some crucial conversations and his is effective written communication because he writes like he thinks and speaks.
Hmm.
So his messages come across as almost like they're tweets or text messages. And I understand, trust me, I understand the need to take it from here and put it on paper. But teaching him to take that step back and pre-read and reread what he's sending out because we don't always have that opportunity to have a face-to-face dialogue where I could tell a lot about what he's thinking by how he's acting.
Hmm.
And when I receive an email that says something to do with a train wreck, right? Is
Right.
I don't know how to take it. So teaching him those simple things and giving him the conversation planner so he feels that going into this conversation, I know that there are things about my direct report that I can't omit. I have to include in the conversation, but I also have to explain the why. I have to understand the perspectives. Like, so those tools were much
Super
different than
important.
the ones that I needed to share with the other guy, the first
Yeah.
example.
Yeah. Cool, man. Super important. That's awesome. And are you and how are you sort of how are you keeping in touch with his progress, his growth? Is there
Usually it's
no.
it's daily.
Yeah.
Right. So right now he's actually tasked with reading a book and taking a chapter from each book and working through that chapter with the coworker that he's having a problem with and getting them both on
What kind of book is
board.
this? I'm just curious. Is this like a Mack truck to building trucks or Mack
Oh
what
no,
kind
it's
of or is it like
no, it
a
like book club type book. It's it's a leadership
okay.
book written by Michael Bungay Stanier. The the book is actually called How to Work with Almost Anyone. And there's what I like about the book is it's got to be about 100 or 150 pages, so it's not a big book. And then every two or three, maybe it's every other chapter is an exercise, or every chapter is an exercise that you can work through things like like falling out of trust, right? It basically you set the groundwork with the person that you want to have this best possible relationship with, and you need to understand what's critical for you, what does success look like for you, what detracts from that relationship, and then how do you come back to a place where you're good? Is it as simple as saying I'm sorry? Is it like, I always feel better when somebody brings me cake? Like what does that look like? And it's different between people. When I read the book, I didn't have anybody in mind per se that I had to build that relationship with. But in this scenario, I bought them each a book and I said, hey, I've already done chapter one for you. Still read it, but you're working with one another from chapter two on, or is
Oh
it
wow.
page 18 on, right? So they're when they're like page 18, that's awfully specific, but when they started going through the book, they're like, I get it now. So the one that I'm working with, the one that I said, hey, I need you to take this seriously. He's read the book twice. He goes, all right, I'm ready to go. What we didn't do, because I'm working through somebody with this, is I didn't explain why it was. I didn't get that buy-in from the other person because I'm coaching my direct report through that process. He has to. We already know why I'm asking him to do it, and he knows who he needs to work with.
How does he
But
feel about
getting
it? He read it
he's
twice, you
on
said.
board.
He's on board. He's yeah.
Yeah, he's on board, but he's still in that camp where, all right, you told me what to do, I did it. Tell him what to do, and I have to teach him not to do it. No, no, no. You have to explain why it's important.
Hmm.
I'll buy the book, right? I'll give you the book. I even pointed out the exercises. But if it's not important enough for you to have that conversation, it's not going to be important enough for him
Hmm.
to read the book.
Hmm.
So that all falls under the, ability to communicate. It's giving effective feedback, it's active listening, it's effective oral and written communication.
Nurturing
I'm
relationships. You're nurturing it. It's something you're cultivating over time through the difficult the stress moments and also yeah, the stress moments and the regular days, I guess you could say. That's cool, man. That's I mean that's leadership right there. So you're committed in your team and your staff and you're investing in them and it's going to benefit the organization, which is the goal. But it's also it's giving this person a framework and a toolkit that he or she can rely on years later, hopefully. So that's commitment. That's coaching right there. That's really that's an example of a committed leader, committed team. But it's a process. I can imagine. What sort of a time frame? Is this like a couple months sort of a time frame you're trying to accomplish, or a couple weeks? How are you guys thinking
All
about
it.
it?
No. So
Take it as it
so
comes.
so the list that I almost read to you has been a really a year's work in process. But taking like the one-off deliverables or the one-off competencies is kind of an in the moment and happening. So the example that I gave you about the gentleman where I said, "Hey, you and this guy read a book." We That could take as soon as a week, could take a month. It's taken about 3 because trying to make sure that they're on the same page and coaching them through the explain the why, make sure that you understand from his perspective why it's important to you or why it should be important to him, and getting those guys on the same page is taking a little bit of time because I'm not going to go out there and just be like, do it, because then there's no buy-in.
Yeah,
So like,
yeah.
oh, go ahead.
Man, no, you're invested. I mean, you're invested, and they feel it, and that's critical to the process. Like that's critical to building real, authentic relationships with your team. Um,
Yeah.
you read it, you're invested in it, and that generally follows suit with the team. Takes effort, and it's not always the first time, or the second time, or the
No.
third time, but it takes some effort, the leaders you mentioned, they have aptitude. They want to win, or they have that. A lot of times, some of us like consciously, and sometimes it's subconsciously. We're competitive in just doing our work great, or seeing that things get done a certain way. Like we want to succeed. Most of us in the workplace want to, but it's having leaders that can see that in us. I think I'm just thinking like I try to point that out, but when I've in my colleagues, but also just in others I've worked with, when they point that out in me, like that's that kind of like reciprocates, within a team when you guys are committed and you guys see each other, you recognize each person's sort of contribution to winning overall. I don't know where I was
It's
going with that, but
contagious.
it's contagious. That's the point. Exactly. Cool, man. Yeah, I guess kind of I think those are two good points. I think we can kind of leave it there on those. In terms of, this in yourself, personal goals for grow, what are you doing? Like, are there any things that any books other books you would recommend? I guess let me back up. Uh, the book that you recommended, How to Work with Almost Anyone by Michael Bungay Stanier.
Yes.
Um, is that a go-to? Is that
That
something that, yeah.
that's so again, different tools for different people. I like it because it breaks down in a really easy way how to overcome some of the problems that most people have, which is generally just communication, and get them on the same page. The way that I've found it to be useful is to put 2 people together and give them each a copy of the book and say, "Hey, here's a free resource for you," or say, "Hey, buy this on Amazon and I'll reimburse you," right? Like one of those ways. But that's a specific tool for a specific use case. You
Love it.
know,
Yeah.
there's different tools for different people.
Yep. Love it, man. Cool. Grading people in organizations, like grading effectiveness, grading competencies. How do you think about that as a leader? Does the HR sort of uh, I'm not sure. Like, in companies sometimes it's twice a year, could be more, sometimes once a year. What frameworks have you used throughout your career? What's worked well for you? And yeah, I'll pass that to you.
So I think once a year is pretty standard, and that's okay if the person that is leading you is having more regular informational type conversations with you. I've totally been in the space where in March it's, "Hey, you didn't do well last year." It's like, "Oh, when?" Right? Like last year was a long time, and at which point didn't you like what I did? Well, you know, the team expected more of you. In what regard? Right? So like, can Was it one thing I did that you didn't like, or was it I didn't do anything of value? No,
Yeah.
no, you were pretty valuable. All right, here's an increase. Like, what? Like, what? Um, so
It's nerve-wracking for the manager. I think just to kind of what you had illustrated really well there. There's this connection like at in the extremes, and then there's also it's tougher. It's in the manager giving someone feedback. It's a little daunting.
yeah.
Sometimes, yeah.
So what I've kind of forced this year, and everybody's like, "Oh, that's a great idea," but no one did it yet, is as a group of leaders, we're meeting twice a year, once in the middle of the year as a mid-year calibration, and then once at the end of the year as a kind of roll up for the year. The leaders that report to me are responsible for explaining how their supervisors or their frontline leaders are like where they're rated in their leadership journey. Are they a high potential leader? Are they a placement problem? Are they a solid contributor? Like kind of giving them a framework.
Is your direct
And
reports reviewing their staff or reviewing?
yes,
Okay,
yeah, my direct reports are reviewing their staff, and then
cool.
they have to kind of come to me and say, "This is what we're doing. Like this is where I think Adam is performing. Adam is a 9. He is a next for promotion." It's like, all right, cool. Why, right? And if they say, "Well, he's just a really nice guy," that's where I reserve the right to push back and say, "Sure, but does Adam lead by example? Is Adam open and approachable? Does Adam, is he aware of his flaws and his faults or his opportunities? How much does he know about the business, right?" And if they can't answer those things, then either Adam isn't next for promotion, or Adam's boss isn't having those regular touch points.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You
What's
uncover
what
that.
I've
How do you? Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, yeah.
How do you implement that? Is that through? Is that like a questionnaire you send to them before they meet you, or is it this is sort of conversational?
So
You kind of
the list,
tell.
yeah, so the list of leadership competencies that I read to you, or that I shared with you, where I sent that to my team and I said, "Hey, the list that we've used or the deliverables that we've asked for are really weak. These are what will elevate your leadership team. Please have a dialogue with your direct report and ask them where they think they fall in these 5 categories. And then you have a conversation with them on where you think they fall in those 5 categories." I had to explain a couple of times the objective isn't to be perfect in all of them. Not because I don't want perfect people, but A, it's not practical.
Hey,
Like I rattled off a long list. It's like 37 or 27 different like categories. No
that's
one
thorough.
can sit there and focus on developing all of those. So take the 5, take the big ones. Where do you think you're strong? Where do you want improvement? And where if let's say that you and I are in that, supervisor and manager relationship, right? So I would tell you I'm really strong in bias for action, and I'd like to develop my communication skills. And you might go, I I actually think it's the other way, right? Like, Bill, I think that you are very articulate, but I think your time management is all over the place. So, what makes you feel that you're really strong and biased for action? Well, I get things done. It's like, all right, I see you doing a lot of things. All right, let's take the remainder of the year and work on what bias for action really means. And I'd like to know what you think you need to develop in communication, because you're really articulate, and I never have a problem understanding what you're saying. So like that's the direction that was given to my team. And of course they went through and they're like, "Yep, we're threes across the board." I'm like, no, that's not, no, that wasn't all right. So it is a growth journey with them as well. But now they have a
100%.
catalog, right? They have a catalog to pull from, and it's like, all right, Now you have this list that you can say, I'm going to take this one thing and work on it, and I'm going to
Hmm.
write down how I demonstrated it, and I'm going to kind of cultivate ways to show other people how to get better at it. Because I'd love to tell you that I could develop 100 people and they can all be perfect, but I can't. I can work with maybe two, but
Yeah.
if I know that you're really good at problem solving, and I know that like you love using the Ishikawa diagram, if somebody comes to me and they tell me, you know what, I'm having a problem kind of understanding what my root cause is, and what
A
I
beautiful
should really be
question.
solving.
Yeah.
It's like, you know what, Adam is really good at like taking those questions and taking those problems and bucketing that information. I'm going to send you to him,
Hmm.
right? Because then you can flex that bias for action or technical skill ability and teach someone else how to be a really good problem solver and use a root cause analysis tool. And then that frees me up to work on something else where whether I believe I'm good at it or someone's told me I'm good at it, it's like, oh, well, I'm really good at being a coach and a mentor. So I'm going to work on that with these two people while I give Adam the opportunity to feel empowered, to feel like he's growing and he's a valuable part of the team. So
Practicing their strengths.
it's
Yeah.
exactly, it's a domino effect.
Yeah. Love that, man. So twice a year, these sort of conversations.
Yeah, but
Is that
those are the
correct?
big conversations, right?
Yep.
The smaller conversations that happen between my direct report and the frontline leader, those need to happen on a more regular basis. And what's interesting is everybody has a different opinion on when those have to happen. I meet with that group of people in a formal setting. I talk to them every day, right?
Yeah.
Like the gentleman I told you that I gave the book to, I talk to him 2 or 3 times a week, even though he doesn't report directly to me. But early, I will sit down in a room, close the door, close my laptop, say, what's the most important thing we should be talking about? And
Love
and
that.
give him the opportunity to say, whatever, I don't feel the book you gave me was helping. Okay. Why?
Yeah.
Well, because it didn't solve the problem. Why? Because the problem still exists. Why? Right?
It's having
And
those
all I do is just
conversations.
ask why.
It eventually lead somewhere, but it's having those conversations. It's talking and dedicating that one-to-one time to it's having those dedicating the time, and then it's cycles of kind of coming back to the problem. It doesn't solve the first time. Can't hit a home run every time, or it doesn't happen the first time at bat. So and it's a process of learning and discovery. And that's awesome. It's awesome that you guys take or you take that dedicate that time with team members. I think within our company, also try to we have yearly reviews. We do quarterly sort of touch bases with different business unit, our warehouse, and then a couple other teams, merchandising and marketing. But then we also monthly we do business reviews. This is something we started this year more formally, doing a formal business review where we sit down and we monthly and we review finance, marketing, like all team members, and it's everyone prepares their own agenda. We have a loose framework and prepare their own agenda. This isn't a group more of a group exercise, but we've done three of them, so two of them, no, three of them so far. Each they tend to each time we get more comfortable, getting more comfortable, more question. The dialogue evolves, and similar to your point, it's evolving the conversation. It's that book didn't work, or that book worked great, or it's the day to day. It's the little touch points in between that. So, yeah, man, I really appreciate the time, dude. This is great. I feel like from this we'll have a lot of little segments. I have no clue how we're gonna edit this and how we put this to work. But I think we've covered a range of really beautiful topics.
Don't even
I
edit it. Just put it out there.
just put it out there. Just pause. I mean, just upload. And that's what you
Yeah.
got to do sometimes. That's what you got to do. And that's really how I'm treating this is just get it out there. Can't overthink it. Just feedback loops. We just kind of continue to improve it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, man. You wanna just to kind of like kick off? I didn't introduce you. I could kind of just um, introduce you briefly, and that can kind of get edited in at a later
Yeah,
point. Cool. And then the fundamentals. I didn't write them down. Let me, can you give me those one more
yeah.
time?
Personal leadership and professionalism, coaching and team building, bias for action, technical skill,
Yeah.
communication.
Communication. Awesome, man.
Not in order of importance, just in order.
Cool, man. Awesome, dude. Awesome, awesome. I just note those for later on, and then yeah, man. I'll just kind of kick off. Hey guys, welcome to the show. My name's Adam. Today I'm excited to introduce Bill Brent, who's currently working at Mack Trucks, building America's trucks. Build and I don't know. Let me say that one time.
It's
Hey.
okay. It is. We're America's truck.
Awesome. We're
So
letting that say, yeah.
do it. So here is I was not that I'm not a truck guy, and I'm so sorry for interrupting you,
No,
but
no, no, go for
this
it.
this is what like bought me in to the Kool-Aid that we're serving. When 9/11 happened, most of those videos that you see pulling rubble away are Mack
Mm-hmm.
trucks.
Mm.
Rewind time. When they were building the Hoover Dam, if you look at any pictures of building the Hoover Dam, Mack trucks brought the concrete. It gives you chills when you think that we're there in the beginning and we're there during the hard times,
Love that. That's
right? We
beautiful.
were born ready.
It's poetic, and it's
It is.
true. It's moving America.
Yes.
Awesome, man. Bill, thank you so much. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Uh, it's
Thanks for
great to,
having me.
yeah, man. Welcome. It's nice to see you again. It's been pleasure kind of getting to know you over these last couple of years. And aside from, I know we've been meaning to do some more running, so that's something we got to do. But kind of kicking off the show today, we're going to talk about Bill's principles, or some of the principles that Bill practices at Mack Trucks. Bill formerly worked comes from the logistics industry. Can I
Yeah.
say that?
Yeah.
General management,
E-commerce, supply chain
e-commerce,
management, all of it.
crushing it. Bill and I met at a previous job when he was working for Zulily in their East Coast facilities, and today's at Mack Trucks. And today we're going to talk about personal leadership in a professional setting, coaching and team building, bias for action, and technical skills, and one more, communication.
Communication.
Let me read that one more time. Professional leadership in professional settings. Is that right?
Personal leadership and professionalism. So close.
All right. Today we're going to talk about personal leadership and professionalism, coaching and team building, bias for action, technical skill, and communication. Awesome.
Awesome.
Awesome, brother. Cool, man. I think we've hit all the main points here today.